Hey, Misos. Meal here. Miis. Everyone loves these customizable, and sometimes nightmare-inducing, characters. But have you ever wondered how these things were created in the first place? Well, today, me and these people will be exploring the 40-year-long history of Miis. It all started in the 1980s when Shigeru Miyamoto was experimenting with the idea of creating your own face, or the faces of others. Using the Famicom disk drive, he created this prototype, and as you can see, it's quite realistic, at least for its time. To add to this, there was going to be a scenario disk, which allowed the faces you create to be animated in different scenarios, as the name implies. With his idea, Shigeru Miyamoto showed the prototype to his colleagues at Nintendo EAD, which is responsible for creating Nintendo's flagship games like Mario and Zelda. But the response was underwhelming, to say the least, with his team stating, "How can this be a game?" He reluctantly had to agree, and left the project at the back of his mind. This prototype became known as the Make Someone You Know project.
In 1999, the N64 was received a disk drive that would allow the console to read discs, just like the Famicom disk drive. With its release, it needed some games, thus Miyamoto was tasked with creating the launch titles for the system. Since he worked on Mario Paint for NES, he decided to make a sequel to the game called Mario Artist. There were 3 versions of Mario Artist: Paint Studio, Talent Studio, and Polygon Studio. But we will just be focusing on Talent Studio. Mario Artist Talent Studio was very similar to the Make Someone You Know project, except the graphics were a lot better and the scenarios were more complex, even featuring voice acting. Despite this game being amusing to the staff, it didn't sell very well, with only a couple thousand units being sold. This can mostly be because the N64 disk drive itself only sold 15,000 units. However, it did leave its mark for Nintendo, as designer Yamashita Takayuki states that his work on Talent Studio was foundational to his eventual work on Miis.
Later in 2002, the Game Boy Advance, e-reader, and camera were set free from the chambers of Miyamoto's basement, and Miyamoto thought that he had the final answer, as he said in his speech at the Game Developers Conference in 2007. This game was called Stage Debut, and features images of faces from the Game Boy Advance camera. These faces were slapped onto models of dancers, and you'd get to watch you and your family members dance alongside Nintendo characters.
Why is Olimar the same height as Satoru Iwata?
Similar to his last 2 attempts, the idea was amusing but not enough for a full release. Around this time, the project was renamed to the Kokeshi concept, which is a traditional Japanese doll with a round head.
Sometime later, Nintendo SPD, responsible for more niche games, were making software for the 3DS, similar to a Fukuwarai, which is a traditional Japanese face puzzle where you place different parts of a face in predetermined locations. At the time, the team was unaware of the Kokeshi concept that Miyamoto had been working on. While the team was testing the game, they realized that they couldn't make their boss, Yoshio Sakamoto, with him telling his team, "Make it so that you can make non-normal faces like mine." They discussed how if the nose were bigger, the mouth larger, the eyes droopier, etc. Thus they added those features which made the face look a lot closer to the person. Satoru Iwata, knowing about Miyamoto's Kokeshi concept, showed the prototype to him, which was exactly what Miyamoto was thinking of back in the 1980s. He was so impressed, in fact, that he went back to his team and told them, "You guys are useless," and worked with Nintendo SPD for a few months. During these months, Miyamoto and his team worked on facial features. They made many faces of different people within the company, and even traveled abroad to make non-Japanese faces. Satoru Iwata made the face of one of the executives at Nintendo of America using the DS software, and it was a big hit, so the team thought they were covered in terms of Western faces. But a little while later, American and European executives were visiting Japan. Miyamoto asked the team to make their faces using the software, but he came back from the meeting saying they didn't like it at all. Interestingly, these faces were made using the Wii and were shown on a TV screen, compared to the DS version Iwata displayed in America, which didn't have much detail with a smaller screen. This could possibly have been better, as it made people use their brains to fill in the gaps in their favor. On the other hand, the Wii version emphasized every detail on the face, making it impossible to miss any imperfections. After this setback, the team asked many people from across the world to send pictures of their faces to fine-tune the features. By doing this, however, they started wondering whether or not they were able to represent everyone's face. Many requests from across the world came in for new parts to be added, and it got to the point that Okamoto, who had a key involvement in the designing of Miis, had to respond to some of the requests by saying, "I won't make that part because I don't think we need it." They were also trying to cut down the file size as much as possible, as Miyamoto suggested that your creations could be stored on the Wii remote to be shared with others. They did this in many ways, like keeping the overall design and options simple, but one of the more notable choices is the action where they close their eyes. It works by changing all the eye types into a line. However, someone suggested making unique closed eye patterns for each eye type, but this was impossible as the overall file size would be too much for the Wii remote to handle. By this point, the team was slowly chipping away at unnecessary features until it was as simple as it could get, and by 2006, the Miis were ready to be released to the world in the form of the Mii channel. The Mii channel was a last-minute decision as they were previously thinking about Miis as a game rather than a tool.
The first game these odd fellas were introduced in was Wii Sports, which was released in 2006. About a month later, another game that showed off the Miis was in the WarioWare series, specifically WarioWare's Smooth Moves, which was released in December of 2006, along with the Wii, which was basically about Wario and his wacky challenges that were included within the game, which the player would complete, kind of like the Mario Party franchise. They served as both background characters and playable characters. Since this game's release, Miis have been included in almost every game with the same role. For example, Wii Sports Resort and Wii Sports Club, which were released in 2009 and 2013 respectively.
When Mario Kart Wii came out in 2008, it was the first ever appearance of Miis in cars, and they also were spectators that would cheer on the racers at the starting line. But you had to unlock the Mii racers first by winning their special cup at 100cc. Additionally, in some courses like Coconut Mall, characters from your console would appear as obstacles, and if there were no Miis registered on your console, they defaulted to Shy Guys. If the Mii racer was a male, they would have red race gear that resembled Mario's iconic red color, and if the Mii was female, then they would have colors that resembled Princess Peach's dress. From Mario Kart Wii up to the latest game Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, still includes these traumatizing little Mii members.
Later in 2013, Nintendo released a game called Tomodachi Life, which was mostly covered in another video of ours about regional differences in Tomodachi Life, which you definitely shouldn't watch, by the way. Then a few years later, a new spin-off of Tomodachi Life was released called Miitopia, which was an RPG-style game based on Tomodachi Quest, a mini-game in Tomodachi Life. A year later, Miis were added to Smash 4 as free characters: Mii Brawler, Mii Sword Fighter, and Mii Gunner. Additionally, as Nintendo's first ever mobile game, Miitomo was released in March of 2016, and, stemming from Tomodachi Life's success, was a social app which had Miis, so it had a legal obligation to be part of this video, but it was shut down in 2018, so it's irrelevant.
Nintendo Switch Sports was a game made in 2022 that was specifically built for the Nintendo Switch. It followed the main premise of a Wii Sports game, but sadly had a lower amount of sports activities than Wii Sports Resort, and the game's protagonists, usually Miis, were replaced with new characters called Sportsmates, which look very different from the original Miis. This game still has Miis, but mostly revolves around the Miis antagonists that you go against in the game, like Matt. This game wasn't received well by the public, which makes sense. I mean, the Sportsmates literally have no soul.
The message of this video is, well, there is none. We're just some random idiots rambling about Miis, the once beloved IPs in Nintendo that seem to be mostly forgotten. And if you're still here, you are going to wake up in a Miyamoto's basement.